We're here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I'm pleased to be joined by legendary crew chief Larry McReynolds, and now with Fox Sports. Larry, obviously it's a great opportunity for folks like us who don't get the experience every day like the professionals do in NASCAR to change tires and to drive these NASCARs. What's it like for guys that haven't done it like myself to get this experience to be able to go out on the track and do what you guys do literally every day?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about what a pit crew does on pit road, and that's changing 4 tires, that it actually has 5 lug nuts per wheel, not 1 lug nut, but 5 per wheel, and dumping about 19 to 19 and a half gallons of race fuel in a car and doing it in 11, 12 seconds. I mean, it's almost like it's defying the law of physics. When I first came into the sport as a jackman back in the early 80s, if we could have a stop sub 20 seconds, we pretty much were going to kick butt off pit road. And to know today, they're almost doing the same functions as we did 20 years ago, and yet they're doing it in 11, 12 seconds. It's pretty unbelievable. But I think a lot comes from, the equipment is better, the jacks are better, the air guns are better, but it's athletes now. These guys train just like a football, baseball, basketball player, and for most of these major Sprint Cup Series teams, it's their job with the race team is a pit crew member. That used to be unheard of back in my day. We just used mechanics and fabricators as pit crew members.
I want to take you back to your crew chief days real quick. The 600 coming up on Memorial Weekend is obviously the longest race of the year for the NASCAR schedule. What was that race like, having to be up on the box for so long, because you start when it's still daylight and you transition into the night? What's that like as a crew chief, being the coach basically to his driver for such a long race?
Yeah, and I was fortunate enough to be able to win this race in 1991 with Davey Allison. It was actually the first win that I got with the 28 car after making the move over there just prior to the 91 season starting. But yeah, you go through so many things. We talked about the pit crew. You know that those guys are going to have to be making anywhere from about 10, 11, 12 pit stops. And of course, it's normally pretty warm, even at nighttime when we get into late May. So when they have to be their best is at the end of the race in their final stops. And then Charlotte Motor Speedway, for whatever reason, it's just one of those weird things that we go through here. It's one of the more temperamental tracks to weather changes. So you know it's going to be an ever-changing track. I think that's one reason we see a lot of drivers and teams that are good at the beginning but not good at the end, and vice versa. So you have to constantly make changes based on what the driver's telling you about the race car, but also knowing what the track's going to change like. And then the other thing is just is communicating with that driver and knowing that this race here is 100 miles longer than any race we run. I know in 91, that last 100 miles, my stomach was churning, because you almost know you're on borrowed time with everything, the engine, the gear, the transmission, because again, it's 100 miles longer than any race we run.
They say the race is usually won on pit road. How important is it for these guys to hit their marks? Because we obviously know, we've seen it time and time again, if guys have a tough time, whether it's a missed, jack falls off or they lose a couple lug nuts, we've seen guys lose races. How important is it to be successful, to be on point each and every stop?
Well, I remember a little thing that Earnhardt used to tell me. He said, I can pass them on pit road a lot easier than I can pass them out on a racetrack. And yeah, if you can maintain or gain spots on pit road, that's going to put your driver in a much better position, and especially in the late stages of the race. And just being a half a second off, that can be the difference between losing 5, 6, 7 spots here on pit road that sometimes can be impossible for your driver to make up once they go back to racing.
All right, well, I'm going to give this a shot. I want you to watch me, but don't judge me if it's a little slow. Okay?
All right, I'll be paying close attention and critiquing every move you make.
Thanks so much, Larry. Larry McReynolds with Fox Sports, joining us today from Charlotte Motor Speedway.